If you scrub through the footage too fast, you almost miss it. A quiet gas station, sometime after midnight. The pumps are empty. The wind is doing most of the talking, and the security camera is staring at the front window like it has every night for years, waiting for something that rarely happens anymore. Then, out of the grainy gray, a small shape hops up into frame. It's not a person. It's not a stray dog. It's a bobcat kitten, thin and dust-covered, with paws just a little too big for its body. It lands on the concrete ledge beneath the camera, looks around once, and then does the strangest thing. It leans in. The kitten rises on its back legs, plants its front paws on the glass, and pushes its face right up against the lens. You can see the whiskers. You can see the fog of its breath. Its mouth is half open, jaws relaxed, lips pulled back just enough that, on camera, it looks like a crooked, toothy grin. A bobcat kitten, staring straight into the security system like it's posing for a family photo. Inside the small office, Harold almost changes the channel. He's seen enough late-night nothing on that screen to last a lifetime. But something about that flicker catches his eye. He rewinds, leans closer, and there it is again. That wild little face pressed right into his world. For a second, he frowns. He thinks it's a glitch, maybe a trick of the light. The cameras here have seen their share of dust storms and moths. But the longer he watches, the more undeniable it becomes. This is a real animal. A real bobcat kitten. And it looks like it's smiling. Harold barks out a laugh before he can stop himself, the sound sharp in the quiet office. It startles Nora, who's been sitting nearby pretending not to care about anything on his screens. She looks up from her phone with that tired, familiar impatience. "What?" she asks. It's the kind of question you throw at someone when you expect nothing good. Harold doesn't explain. He just hits play again and tilts the monitor toward her. Together, they watch the scene from the top. The empty front step. The tiny body enters the frame like a little ghost. The jump, the scramble, and then that ridiculous close-up. The bobcat's mouth hanging open in what to the human brain reads as pure mischief. This time, it's Nora who laughs first. It's not polite or controlled. It's a real laugh that breaks out before she can put her guard back up, the kind that makes your shoulders drop a little and your eyes sting just a bit after. Hola, and half from the clip and half from the shock of again. For a moment, that office doesn't feel like a forgotten room in the middle of nowhere. It feels like the center of something, even if that something is just two people and one bobcat kitten who has no idea it's just made them both feel alive. If you've ever had a small, unexpected moment like that, you know the feeling. A silly video in your feed that somehow cracks open a hard day. A neighbor's dog is doing something ridiculous at the exact second you thought you couldn't smile. The world doesn't change. The bills are still there. The road is still long. But something inside shifts half an inch toward the light. That's what this kitten does for Harold and Nora. In a life that's gotten very quiet, this tiny stranger walks right up to the camera and, without meaning to, hands them back their laughter. From a technical point of view, there's nothing special happening. Every gas station in America runs cameras like this. Most of them just record people coming and going, cars pulling up, the long stretch of ordinary. But on this particular night, this system stops being a piece of security equipment and turns into a little movie screen, showing a story no one could have scripted. A wild bobcat kitten turning an empty, aging forecourt into a stage. And it's not just funny because of the face. It's funny because of where it happens. This isn't a busy travel plaza off a major interstate full of bright logos and endless noise. It's a small station on an older road, half forgotten, where long gaps stretch between customers. For Harold, most nights feel like reruns. Same view, same silence. Same wondering if anyone still needs what he offers. So when a bobcat chooses his window ledge, of all the ledges in all the miles of high desert around them, it hits a little deeper than just cute animal caught on camera. It feels like the universe is tapping on the glass and saying, "Look up. There's still something happening here." Nora doesn't know all of that yet. She just knows that she's been through months of gray, and now she's laughing so hard her eyes water at a wild kitten that has no idea it's being broadcast. Hola doesn't put any of it into words either. He just rewinds. Let the moment play one more time. Let the sound of his own laughter settle in the room, like dust that finally decided to land. If you're watching this, you might find yourself smiling too, trying not to. You can feel that tug in your chest, that mix of humor and tenderness that only comes when real life swings from lonely to ridiculous in the span of a few seconds. And this is only the start. Because to really understand why this tiny bobcat showing up on a security camera matters so much, we have to step back from the screen and look at the man sitting in front of it and the long, quiet years that led to this night. So as you keep watching, notice what this brings up in you. Maybe you felt bypassed or left behind by a world that moved on. Maybe you've had your own Micah moment you've never told anyone about. Hold that feeling close. We're going to leave the grainy footage for a moment, step out of the office, and walk with Harold into the daylight. Back to when his gas station wasn't empty, and before a bobcat kitten ever thought to smile at his camera. If you had met Harold 20 years ago, you wouldn't have called this a lonely place. Back then, the old highway outside his gas station flowed like a slow river. Pickups, RVS, logging trucks, families in minivans, the occasional dusty sedan held together by hope and duct tape. They all stopped here, not because they had to, but because this was one of those familiar dots on the map where people felt like someone would remember their face. Harold used to stand by the door with a rag in his back pocket, greeting folks by name before they even reached the pump. "Morning, Tom. Same route today? How'd that old Chevy treat you this time? Kids need a snack for the road?" He didn't have to check a screen to know who'd been by. The proof hung on the walls. Faded Polaroids of truckers holding coffee cups, smiling under the awning. A family in front of a station wagon with a dog in the back seat. A cup. Inside the office, there's still a ledger, its cover soft from years of being opened. Names and dates fill the pages. Not for billing, just for remembering. Then the new road came. One ribbon of fresh asphalt laid just far enough away that the station's lights became a distant glow instead of a destination. It promised faster travel, fewer stops, and more efficiency. The very things people thought they wanted. At first, Harold pretended it wouldn't change much. Some folks would stick to the old route out of habit, he told himself. He kept the coffee brewing, wiped the pump handles, and straightened the candy bars by the register. But the flow slowed. Then it thinned. Then it turned into something else entirely. Instead of being a place where you stopped because you wanted to, the gas station became a place you pulled into only if you miscalculated. Or if you were lost. Days went by with no one at Pump 3. The bell above the front door stayed silent. The coolers hummed stubbornly, more full of unsold drinks than conversation. The photos on the wall faded a little more each season. Harold never said, "I've been left behind." He just said things like, "Traffic's lighter these days," and "Guess folks are in a hurry." Small phrases that held a much heavier truth. Sometimes he'd step outside at dusk and watch the faint line of headlights moving along the new highway in the distance. It was close enough to see, far enough to feel out of reach. You could almost imagine those drivers thinking, "We'll just push on to the next big town. No need to stop." They didn't know that a man was standing under a worn awning, wiping invisible smudges off the glass door, out of habit more than necessity. They didn't know that once, this had been a little hub of human traffic, where news traveled from one co-op yard to another through the mouths of drivers leaning on the counter. They didn't know that inside, behind the register, there was a framed picture of a woman laughing with a tabby cat in her arms, taken in the back lot. That woman was Harold's wife. She used to put out small dishes of food behind the station for stray cats, for the occasional wanderer from the scrub brush. She called them her evening guests. She'd talk to them the way people talk to old friends, telling them how the day had been, who had come through, and what the weather was doing. After she passed, the dishes went away. The strays drifted off. The back lot grew quiet. So when we say the road moved on, it wasn't just about fewer customers. It was about the slow erasing of a shared life. The kind of loss that doesn't show up all at once, but in tiny, half-empty moments you can't quite name. Older viewers know this feeling. Maybe it's not a gas station for you. Maybe it's a small shop or a classroom or a factory floor that used to be full. Maybe it's a kitchen table that doesn't see as many chairs pulled up as it once did. Hola keeps opening the station every morning because that's what he knows how to do. He checks the pumps, flips on the lights, and runs the receipt tape through the register. There's dignity in that, even on the days when the only sound is the wind gusting across the lot. When people talk about bobcats and other wildlife near roads, they usually focus on danger, collisions, close calls, and the practical advice: slow down, watch the shoulders, pay attention at dawn and dusk, and that matters. But what's easy to miss is how, in places like this, humans are just as vulnerable as the animals that cross those lanes. Harold is one of those humans, a man rooted in a spot the rest of the world now tends to glide past. And that's what makes what happens next so powerful. Because before a bobcat kitten ever pressed its face into his security camera, before the internet ever noticed, the real story started with a quiet man who refused to shut his doors. He stayed where he was, even when the world redrew its map without him at the center. If you feel a little tug in your chest hearing about him, it might be because you've wondered if you still matter in the same way you once did. If anyone notices what you're still holding together. For a little while longer, stay with Harold here, on this old stretch of road. Take in the stillness, the faded photos, the ledger full of names. Because into this forgotten space, one night, a wild visitor will walk right up and choose his window ledge of all the places in all that open land. And that bobcat kitten will do something Harold never expected. It will make him laugh out loud again and open the door for someone else's second chance. In the next part, we'll step back into that midnight office and watch how this tiny desert neighbor starts turning into a nightly ritual. If you've ever had an animal cross your path at just the right moment, keep that memory close as we meet Mika properly for the first time, and then again and again. If you drove past the station on mile 47 and glanced through the front window, you might think Nora was just another person behind a counter, killing time on her phone. But what you'd really be seeing is someone between lives. She didn't come out here because she loved the desert or because she dreamed of running a gas station. She came because the life she'd been building somewhere else quietly fell apart, piece by piece, until this was the one place that still had a door open with her name on it. A job that drained the color out of her days. A relationship that ended with more silence than shouting. Rent that edged higher while her energy slipped lower. By the time she called Harold, she wasn't coming home with a grand plan. She was coming home with boxes, a tired voice, and the kind of emptiness you don't talk about on the phone. Now, most mornings at mile 47 start the same way for her. She flips on the lights. The humming coolers come alive. The register screen glows. She checks her messages, scrolls through faces and updates from people whose lives seem to be moving in one clear direction. And then she looks up at shelves that haven't changed position in months. The bobcat is still just a rumor inside the dark, beyond the glass. For now, it's just Nora, the road, and the slow ticking of the clock. If you've ever moved back in with family after thinking you were past that stage, you know the cocktail of emotions. Relief that you have somewhere to land, and shame that you needed to. Gratitude and embarrassment sit side by side at the kitchen table. Nora carries all of that behind the counter. Harold doesn't press. He asks practical questions. How'd you sleep? You want coffee? You remember how to reset pump 2 if it sticks. He lets her pick up tasks at her own pace. Sweeping, stocking coolers, wiping glass that doesn't really need wiping. She does them because it feels better than sitting. But her mind is somewhere else, replaying old scenes from the life she left. In quiet moments, she stares at the security monitors. Not because she cares what's out there, but because it's something to look at that isn't her phone screen. Cars slide by on the distant highway. too far away to see the station, let alone turn in. Sometimes she walks to the wall where the old Polaroids hang. She finds herself in one of them, younger, holding a soda, grinning with that careless happiness you don't know you're going to miss someday. Beside her is Harold, looking almost the same as he does now, just a little less lined around the eyes. She doesn't stay at that wall long. She looks, feels a pinch in her chest, and then goes back to straightening a rack of chips that doesn't really need straightening. From the outside, it would be easy to say she's starting over, but it doesn't feel like a start to her. It feels like a pause. Like someone hit the stop button on a movie she was starring in, and now she's stuck in the frozen frame, waiting to see if anyone will press play again. This is why the bobcat matters later. Because before Mika ever appears, Nora is already living in a kind of emotional desert. There are days when nothing new seems to happen, where the only movement is inside her own head. Nights when she lies awake in her old bedroom, listening to trucks on the new road, and wondering if she somehow fell out of her own life. For a lot of people in midlife, this part of the story is familiar. Maybe you had to leave a career earlier than you planned. Maybe a marriage ended. Maybe health or family or just plain economics forced you into a kind of unexpected intermission. You're not starting from scratch, exactly. You're starting from tired. That's where we find Nora. The irony is, she's good with stories. In her old job, she edited videos, put together presentations, and made other people's ideas look clean and sharp. She spent her days shaping content that traveled fast and far, while she herself felt more and more stuck. Now, in this small station, she's surrounded by raw material. The rhythm of the road, the quiet humor of Harold's habits, the way the light falls across the lot in late afternoon. But without a reason to pick up a camera or open an editing program, she lets those moments float past her until the night Harold calls her over to the monitor, and that first clip of the bobcat kitten fills the screen. Her laugh that night doesn't just come from the surprise of seeing a wild bobcat press its face into a cheap security camera. It comes from somewhere deeper, somewhere that remembers what it felt like to share something, to create something, to watch other people respond. Later, when she lies awake in the dark, the image won't leave her. That thin, dusty bobcat, standing on its back legs like an awkward teenager, mouth open in what looks like a grin. A tiny wild life that has no idea it just walked into the middle of someone's stalled story. This is where Nora's second start really begins. Not the day she moved back, not the day she took the job behind the counter. It begins with the moment she realizes that the station at mile 47 still has something to show the world, and that she might be the one to hold up the camera. If you've ever felt like your skills, your creativity, your compassion got boxed up and shoved into the corner for a while, you might recognize yourself in her. Maybe you've wondered if you'll ever get to use them in a way that feels kind and meaningful again. As we move into the next part, watch what Nora chooses to do with that silly, tender footage of a bobcat kitten smiling at the glass. Watch how a small act, cutting a few clips together, giving them a name, sharing them, turns from just something to do into the start of a quiet, unexpected calling. And as you listen, you might think about your own mile 47, the place in your life where things slowed down, but where something new might still be waiting just outside the frame. The second night, they both pretended they weren't waiting. Harold counted the register twice. Nora wiped a spotless counter. The clock on the wall slid toward midnight, and no one said a word about the security monitor in the corner. But every few minutes, one of them would glance up, just to chat. You know that feeling when you tell yourself something was a one-time thing, but a small, hopeful part of you is listening for it to happen again? That's the air inside the station on night 2. Outside, the desert is doing what it always does. The wind pushes sand in low, restless waves. A semi hums by on the distant highway, headlights streaking like a comet you can't quite touch. The pumps stand still under the awning, silver and patient. Then, there it is. A small shape at the edge of the camera frame. A bobcat kitten, the same thin little body, the same dust-dulled coat. Mika hops up in one quick motion, lands on the ledge beneath the window and, almost like it's following stage directions, lifts onto its back legs and leans in. Front paws on the glass, whiskers fanned, mouth just open enough to look amused. Harold doesn't bark out a laugh this time. He exhales instead, a soft, "Well, I'll be," that sounds like a prayer someone forgot how to say. Nora's smile starts before she even realizes it, so when she glances at him, they meet halfway in that shared, wordless grin. By the third night, it's no accident. Nora closes out the till a little slower. Harold refills the coffee pot, he knowing no one will drink. The office lights stay on past the time he usually shuts them down. Neither of them mentions the bobcat, but they both drift toward the monitor as the hour gets late. On the screen, the empty front step glows in gray tones. A moth flickers past. The image rolls once, twice. Then Mika appears. This time, the kitten does something new. It jumps up, misses the ledge by an inch, scrabbles and hauls itself the rest of the way with an annoyed little twist of its body. When it finally straightens, it looks directly into the camera, head tilted as if to say, "You got that, right?" Nora laughs out loud, not just at the slip, but at the way this wild animal seems to be inventing its own little dance in front of their lens. By the end of that first week, checking the cameras isn't a security task anymore. It's a nightly ritual. Some evenings, Mika shows up early, just after the last streak of color leaves the sky. Other nights, it keeps them waiting, appearing when Nora's already halfway to turning off the lights. Once, the bobcat kitten doesn't come at all, and the disappointment is sharper than either of them wants to admit. You can see the pattern forming, like the track marks in the dust where Mika's small paws have landed over and over again. Night after night, the steps are almost the same. Hop up, shake off sand, stand tall, lean in, mouth open in that strange little bobcat smile. But within that sameness, there are tiny differences that both of them start to notice. A new smudge on the fur, a burr caught in the ear, the way Mika's balance improves, paws are surer on the narrow ledge. The kitten is growing, changing, living a whole separate life somewhere out there in the scrub. And then, for a few seconds each night, it shares a sliver of that life through a cheap security camera. This is where the ritual becomes something more than a joke. For Harold, those few seconds are like someone ringing the bell above the front door again. It's not a paying customer, but it's a regular. A creature that, out of all the rooftops, all the rocks, all the fence posts in that stretch of desert, chooses his window. For Nora, it's a thread back to a part of herself she thought she'd left behind. She starts clipping the funniest moments in her head, thinking about how she'd cut them together. She imagines what someone miles away might feel, watching this tiny bobcat kitten make the same goofy entrance night after night. If you've ever had a ritual that grew slowly, without you planning it, a nightly walk, a cup of tea at the same time, checking on a porch light down the street, you know how quietly powerful this can be. It gives shape to days that might otherwise blur together. It gives you something small and specific to look forward to. In a world where a lot of us are surrounded by noise, this is a different kind of appointment. No notifications, no schedule. Just two people and one bobcat meeting in the glow of a black and white monitor. What makes it special isn't just that Mika is a wild animal. It's these moments that are happening in a place the world has mostly forgotten. Mile 47 isn't a national park or a famous overlook. It's a worn patch of concrete, a metal awning, a couple of pumps, and a camera that was installed to catch shoplifters, not miracles. And yet, night after night, something gentle and wild steps into the frame. As the week goes on, Nora starts staying in the office a little longer after closing. Harold finds reasons to wander back there, coffee mug in hand, even if all the doors are locked and there hasn't been a customer in hours. They don't say, "Let's see if the bobcat comes." They just end up there together. That's how you know a ritual has taken hold. You don't put it on the calendar. You just feel its pull. Maybe, as you listen, you're thinking of your own small rituals. A bird that visits your feeder at the same time each day. A stray cat that walks the fence line at dusk. The way you always watch the weather or the sky before bed. These habits might look small from the outside, but inside, they're anchors. In this little gas station, the bobcat kitten becomes that anchor, and without quite realizing it, Nora begins to do what she's always done best. She starts to turn real life into a story. She saves clips, rewinds favorite moments, and imagines a title. She wonders what might happen if she lets someone else see what she and Harold now wait for every night. That question, what if I share this, is the bridge between their quiet ritual and everything that comes next. So stay with them a little longer in this first week of smiles. Picture that grainy screen, that tiny wild face, that odd bobcat grin. Because in the next part, Nora will take these private healing seconds and send them down the very roads that once rushed past them, out into the wider world, one upload at a time. It happens on one of those slow afternoons when the sun feels heavy and time feels stuck. The pumps are quiet. The bell above the door hasn't chimed in over an hour. Heat shimmers over the lot like a mirage. Inside, the station hums with the steady, low sounds of refrigerators and fluorescent lights. And Nora, sitting behind the counter, watching the cursor blink on her phone screen. On the security monitor, last night's footage is paused on Mika's face. The bobcat kitten is mid-smile, nose almost flattened to the glass, mouth open in that crooked way that never gets old. Nora stares at that frozen frame and thinks, almost out loud, someone else should see this. She's not thinking about going viral. She's not thinking about views or algorithms. She's thinking about the nurse she used to see on the bus after late shifts, eyes rimmed red. The truckers who used to come through, joking their way through exhaustion. The older woman at her old apartment building watched animal clips at night because they helped her sleep. Without making a big announcement, Nora picks up her phone and walks into the back office. She scrolls through the recorded clips. The first night Mika appeared, the slip on the ledge, the paw on the lens, the head tilt that looks like pure curiosity. She trims away the dead space, the empty ledge, the noise. She leaves just enough of each moment so the bobcat kitten's personality shines through. Her fingers remember what to do. Cut, crop, soften the brightness so the grainy footage feels intentional instead of cheap. She adds a simple caption. Our only regular customer these days, mile 47, Eastern Oregon. No hashtags, no big text shouting at anyone. Just a gas station, a bobcat kitten, and a quiet sentence that says more than it seems to. She hesitates before hitting post. It feels strangely intimate, sharing this small ritual that's been just hers and Harold's. But then she thinks about all those other people out there, on their own little islands, scrolling through a flood of news and noise. Maybe a smiling bobcat is exactly the kind of interruption they need. So she taps the screen, and in that tiny motion, the desert reaches out to the rest of the world. At first, nothing much happens. A few likes, a handful of views, a comment from a friend in another state. Is this real? Nora smiles, types back, yes, meet Mika. Then she sets the phone down, rings up a customer, and wipes a spill at the soda machine. But while she goes about the day, the video keeps traveling. It gets shared in a small group for wildlife lovers. Then someone posts it in a forum for long-haul drivers. This little guy visits a lonely gas station every night. Made me grin. A stranger stitches it into a compilation called something like, Try Not to Laugh, Animals versus Security Cameras. By the time Nora checks her phone again that evening, the view count has quietly rolled past anything she's used to seeing next to her name. The numbers are one thing. What really reaches her are the comments. I watch this on my break from the night shift. That bobcat smile gets me every time. This reminds me of the old stations my dad stopped at when we drove cross-country. Been feeling really low lately. Don't know why this tiny desert cat made me tear up, but it did. Thanks for sharing. She reads them aloud to Harold in the office, standing next to the monitor where Mika's latest visit is paused. He shakes his head, half amused, half stunned. You're telling me Folks all the way in Michigan are watching that little rascal press his nose on my window. Looks like it, Nora says, and they love him. The next day, she prints out a few of the comments and tapes them on the wall beside the old Polaroids. The faces in those photos belong to the drivers and families who used to pass through in person. The words on these papers belong to people who may never set foot on mile 47, but somehow feel like part of it now. The internet has become an unseen customer, thousands of eyes looking in through that tiny lens, sharing a moment with a bobcat kitten and a forgotten gas station in the desert. It's easy to talk about social media as loud and shallow, but here, it does something gentler. It takes a small, true thing, a wild bobcat showing up night after night, and hands it to people who need a reason to smile before they go back to their own hard shifts, their own quiet houses. And for Nora, something else shifts. This isn't like her old job, where she spent hours polishing content for companies that barely noticed her. This is her grandpa's station, her camera choice, her caption. When someone types, "I feel less alone watching this," it lands somewhere real. She starts checking in with her audience the way Harold used to check in with his regulars. "How's everyone's night going out there?" she writes under one video. "Tell me where you're watching from," she adds under another. People answer. Hospital break room in Phoenix. Cab of a semi outside St. Louis. Small apartment in Maine. Haven't been out west in years. Thanks for the view. Slowly, a map forms in her mind. Dots of light across the country, all connected by a bobcat kitten who has no idea how many hearts it's nudging. If you're watching this and finding yourself strangely attached to this little gas station, you're not alone. That's the quiet magic happening here. A single camera at a lonely pump has become a doorway, not just for a bobcat, but for a community that didn't know it was looking for one more soft place to land. And this is still only the beginning. Because once people start commenting and sharing, some of them don't just want to watch. They want to go. They want to find the station at mile 47, stand under that awning, and see if the bobcat might show up while they're there. In the next part, we'll see what happens when those distant dots of light on Nora's mental map become real headlights pulling into the lot, bringing with them stories, grief, laughter, and a kind of healing neither she nor Harold expected. As you keep listening, you might think about the last time a small clip or a simple story online made you feel strangely seen. That feeling is what's about to walk through the front door of this little gas station, one traveler at a time. The first time someone walks in and says, "Is this where the smiling bobcat kitten comes?" Harold almost answers, "We just sell gas." He stops himself, because by now, even he knows that isn't the whole truth anymore. It starts with one car, then a slow trickle of others. Not the rushed, fill up and go kind of traffic the station used to see years ago. These are different. People pull in a little slower. They step out and look around, as if they're checking whether this place feels like it does on their screen. Nora tapes a small sign inside the door, just above the magazine rack. "Yes, this is the station with the smiling bobcat kitten." Underneath, in smaller print, "Wild, not tame. Please watch from a distance." It's simple, but it's a line in the sand. A reminder that Mika is a bobcat, not a mascot. One afternoon, a silver sedan pulls in, and a woman about Harold's age walks up to the counter, holding a small tin in both hands. She introduces herself as Marlene. She's been watching the videos from 3 states away. "I brought my sister this way once," she says softly. "Years ago, before she got sick. We always stopped at little places like this. Thought it was time I did it again." She doesn't ask to see the bobcat. She asks if she can sit for a while. So Nora points her to the bench they've dragged under the bit of shade cloth by the window. Marlene sits there quietly, watching a loop of Mika's best, smiles on the little TV they've rigged up inside. At some point, Nora notices the woman's shoulders drop, just a little, like someone set down a heavy bag. Before she leaves, Marlene pins a note to the corkboard Nora hung near the photos. "For all the small lives that made us laugh when we didn't think we could." Another day, a truck rumbles in, and a driver named Dale steps out, eyes lingering on the road before he looks at the station. When he sees the monitor with last night's bobcat visit, something in his face softens. He tells Harold in a low voice about the time a deer ran in front of his rig on a dark stretch of road, how he still sees it sometimes, even years later. "I can't fix that," he says, nodding toward the screen, "but maybe I can drive a little slower now." He fills up, then adds a pin to the big paper map Nora taped to the wall, tiny colored dots marking all the places people have driven from. His pin sits among dozens, then hundreds, turning the map into a patchwork of journeys that all somehow meet at mile 47. Little by little, the station changes. None of it is flashy. There's no remodel, no new logo, just small, steady additions that say, "You can rest here. You can learn something here." A narrow shelf appears beneath the window with a handwritten sign, "Safe driving around wildlife." On it, simple brochures about slowing down at dawn and dusk, looking for the flash of eyes at the roadside, and what to do if you see an animal in your lane. Next to the register, a clear jar with a modest label, "Roadside Wildlife Fund, for signs, reflectors, small changes that help." People drop in crumpled bills, spare coins, and a few larger notes folded in half. No pressure, no speeches. Just a chance to be part of something. One morning, a dusty SUV pulls up, and a woman in a field jacket steps out, carrying a rolled-up poster tube and a calm, purposeful air. This is Dr. Elena Brooks, from a regional conservation group that reached out after seeing Micah's video. She spends an afternoon walking the stretch of road with Harold and Nora, pointing out the low spots where animals cross, the gentle slope that draws bobcats, deer, and coyotes to a certain culvert. "This is bobcat country," she says, not like a warning, but like a blessing. "They've been here long before the road. Our job is to help everyone use this space together, as safely as possible." Inside the station, she unfolds maps and simple diagrams on the counter. She explains how far a young bobcat might roam, how a kitten like Mika is probably still figuring out safe paths between food, water, and shelter. She talks about what happens when traffic cuts through those paths, and what small steps can reduce harm. She never raises her voice. It feels less like a lecture, more like someone passing on family knowledge. Nora listens, absorbing details. She starts weaving these quiet facts into her videos and captions, not as scolding, but as gentle context. "Here's why Micah shows up around this time of night. This is why we asked drivers to slow down near mile 47. People respond. "I didn't know that. I'll watch closer now. Thank you for explaining without making me feel bad. I'm learning." The gas station, once just an empty stop, begins to feel like a place with a purpose again. Not just to sell gas, but to connect dots between people and animals, between screens and real roads, between regret and doing better next time. For Harold, that purpose feels like oxygen. He finds himself stepping outside more often to check the new reflective markers they've added near a low crossing. When visitors ask, "Is that where the bobcat comes from?" he can point and say, "Maybe. We're trying to make it safer for whatever does." For Nora, it's a different kind of calling. She's no longer just posting a cute bobcat clip. She's curating a little sanctuary, both on-screen and off. Each video isn't just, "Look how funny this bobcat is," but also, "Look how much life is still happening here, and how we can care for it." If you've ever had a place in your life shift from errand stop to quiet refuge, a certain park bench, a small cafe, a walking trail, you know this feeling. The location doesn't change much, but your relationship to it does. It becomes somewhere you go when you need to exhale. Mile 47 quietly becomes that kind of place, for both travelers and viewers who may never set foot there. A sanctuary with humming coolers, worn floors, a bobcat on the screen, and a sense that your tired heart is welcome. And still, through all of this, one thing stays clear. Mika is wild. There are no treats left on the ledge, no attempts to tame or touch. When a visitor reaches for a bag of jerky, thinking to tempt the kitten closer, Harold or Nora will gently shake their head and share what Dr. Brooks told them. "If you love a wild animal, Let it stay wild. That reminder will matter more than they know, especially on the night when the bobcat kitten doesn't appear. When the ledge is empty and the sanctuary feels too quiet. In the next part, we'll sit with that silence, what it stirs up in Harold, in Nora, and maybe in you. As you keep watching, you might think about a time when a comforting presence in your life went missing for a while, and what you learned about love and letting go in that gap. The first sign that something's wrong isn't dramatic. It's just nothing. No small shape at the edge of the frame. No, hop onto the ledge. No bobcat kitten pressing its face to the glass like it owns the place. The camera stares at an empty concrete step, washed in gray. The desert wind flickers across the screen as a faint shimmer. The clock in the corner of the monitor rolls past the time Mika usually appears. Hola tells himself it's fine. Wild animal, he mutters, straightening a stack of cups that doesn't need straightening. Got plenty of other places to be. But he doesn't turn the monitor off. Nora feels it too, like a chair missing at a table you've gotten used to. She tries to focus on closing out the till, on wiping down the counter, on answering a few online comments, but every few minutes, her eyes drift back to that glowing screen. Nothing. The second night, they pretend not to be waiting again, and fail again. Harold refills the coffee pot, long after anyone's likely to want a fresh cup. Nora lingers in the office, phone in hand, scrolling through old clips instead of the live feed. She tells herself Mika is just hunting somewhere else tonight. Maybe the bobcat found a better perch, a better camera at some other gas station. But when the usual hour passes and the ledge stays empty, the air changes. This time, the silence has a weight. It's on the third day that a car pulls in, with its headlights a little uneven and its driver a little too pale. A mid-sized sedan rolls to a stop near the pumps. The man who steps out doesn't start the fueling routine. He walks straight inside, keys in a trembling hand. "I think I hit something," he says. The words come out thin. "Out on the curve a few miles back. I didn't see it until..." He doesn't finish the sentence. Odd's chest tightens. For a split second, he's back in his own younger body, hands locked around a steering wheel. The memory of a fox and a foggy night pounding at the edge of his mind. He sets that aside for now, one thing at a time. He asks the man to sit, offers him water, and walks out to look at the front of the car. There's a dent in the bumper and a few tufts of fur caught in the grille. No gore. No broken shape on the road behind them that he can see. Just the evidence of a hard, sudden meeting between metal and something soft. Nora stands at the window, heart thudding. The desert seems to stretch wider and emptier than usual. They don't know if it was a deer, a coyote, a bobcat. Maybe not Mika at all. The desert holds more lives than they can count. But still, the timing tugs at something deep. Dr. Brooks comes by later after Nora calls her with a tight voice. She listens, eyes gentle, then takes a slow breath. "This is part of life out here," she says quietly. "For the animals and for the drivers. We can make it safer. We can't make it perfect." She walks the curve near where the man thinks it happened, makes notes about sightlines and speed. She talks with Harold and Nora about adding another warning sign, maybe reflective eyes along the roadside to catch headlights, and give both humans and wildlife an extra second. Inside, though, there's a different conversation happening. That night, Mika doesn't show again. The ledge on the monitor stays empty, gray concrete under gray sky. The absence presses in like a dull ache. Harold sits in his usual chair, hands around a mug that's gone cold. He doesn't look away from the screen, not even when his eyes start to burn. Nora beside him scrolls through their channel, watching old videos of the bobcat kitten slipping, grinning, pawing at the glass. After a long silence, Harold speaks. "You know," he says, "I hit something once, years back. A little red fox ran out of nowhere on a foggy night. I braked, but it was too late." He swallows. "I pulled over, sat there on the shoulder with my hands stuck on the wheel. Your grandma sat with me. Didn't say I was a bad driver. Didn't say it happens. She just put a hand on my arm and sat there until I could move again. Nora listens, surprised. He's never told her this. Next week, he goes on, she started leaving food for strays behind the station. We couldn't fix what happened, but we could be gentler with the ones that were still here. For a moment, Nora sees her grandmother in her mind, bending in the twilight to set down dishes, talking softly to cats and whatever else wandered close. The connection between that gesture and the bobcat kitten at their window clicks into place. Maybe this is their version of that now. Not feeding Mika, not trying to keep the bobcat, but doing what they can for the ones still crossing these roads. When another visitor, a few days late, reaches for a bag of jerky, ready to hold it up to the glass and get the bobcat to come closer, Nora stops them gently. We don't feed Mika, she says with a small smile. If we love this bobcat, we have to let it stay wild. She repeats what Dr. Brooks taught them. Feeding changes behavior, makes animals less cautious, pulls them too close to people and cars. Loving something wild means giving it space, even when you miss it. It's not an easy lesson. Not for people who drove hours hoping to see the famous bobcat kitten. Not for Harold and Nora, who feel the empty nights more deeply than anyone. But something else starts happening in that gap. Visitors who don't see Mika still sit on the bench and watch the old clips. They talk about other animals they've seen on roadsides, the ones that made it and the ones that didn't. They put more pins in the map, write more notes on the corkboard. For the ones we couldn't save, for the ones still crossing, for Mika, wherever you are tonight. Online, Nora posts honestly. Some nights Mika doesn't visit, she writes under a montage of older clips. That's part of loving a wild bobcat. We don't own this little life. We're just grateful for the times our paths cross. The comments answer back in kind. Thank you for saying that. Reminds me that nothing is guaranteed, and that's why it's precious. I'll be thinking of Mika when I drive tonight, and I'll slow down. In a way, the nights without the bobcat deepen the bond. They remind everyone that this isn't a cartoon or a pet. It's a real animal in a real desert, with risks and dangers, just like the people watching. And then, one evening, not with fanfare, not with perfect timing, Mile 47 gets a small gift. On the monitor, at the edge of the frame, a shape appears, a little bigger now, for thicker. One ear is tipped with a small notch, like it's carrying a tiny story from somewhere out in the sage and scrub. Mika hops up, more confidently than before. The bobcat kitten, no, not quite a kitten anymore, leans in and opens its mouth in that familiar half grin that looks like it was made for camera lenses. In the office, Harold laughs with relief. Nora exhales a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. If you've ever had someone, or something, disappear for a while and then return, changed but still them, you know that mix of joy and tenderness. They don't know where Mika went. They don't know what the notch in the ear means. They just know this. The bobcat is still out there, still choosing their ledge, still reminding them that wild lives and human hearts share this stretch of road. In our final part, we'll step back and look at what's grown from this tiny visitor. How Mile 47 settles into its new identity as a quiet sanctuary, and how the story of one smiling bobcat kitten continues to ripple through the people who stop, watch, and then drive on a little more gently. As you stay with us, you might think about the wild Mika in your own life. The person, the place, the small creature that showed up, disappeared, and still changed you in ways you carry, even when the ledge looks empty. If you drove past Mile 47 today, you might not notice anything extraordinary at first glance. The pumps are still the same old pumps. The awning still creaks in the wind. The sign still hums softly against the big western sky. From a distance, it looks like any other small gas station on a long American road. But if you step inside, you feel it almost right away. Something here is different. The fridge doors still hiss when they open. The coffee still sits in its glass pot. The register still beeps the way registers do. Yet the air carries a kind of quiet attention it didn't used to have. On one wall, the paper map is no longer dotted with just a handful of pins. It's filled now. Tiny colors scattered across the country, each one marking a person who came because of a bobcat kitten that smiles at a camera. Under the map, the corkboard is crowded with notes in all kinds of handwriting. Stopped for gas, left with a lighter heart. For Mika and all the wild ones trying to cross. Watching from home helped me through a hard winter. Being here feels like visiting an old friend. Near the window, there's that narrow shelf with pamphlets about driving safely around wildlife. Simple drawings of deer, elk, and, yes, a little bobcat. People pick them up without being told. Some tuck them into glove compartments next to insurance cards and road maps, quiet reminders that the lives along the roadside matter too. The cameras still record, but not just for security. They've become a bridge. Some nights, Mika appears, no longer a tiny bobcat kitten, but a lean, self-assured desert cat. The visits are less frequent now, and the way children visit home less often as they grow. When Mika does show up, the bobcat still hops onto the ledge, still leans close, still opens its mouth in a way that looks very much like a grin. Other nights, the ledge stays empty, the desert moving just out of frame, and somehow, that's become part of the comfort too. The station has learned to live with both presence and absence, with sightings and with long stretches of sky. Inside, the videos keep playing. New clips join the old ones. Short moments of Mika blinking in the half-light, walking along a fence line, slipping past the edge of the frame with a flick of a ringed tail. Mixed in are shots of the sanctuary itself, a traveler reading notes on the corkboard, a driver running a hand over the map pins, a pair of hands setting up a new reflective marker by the roadside at dusk. Online, the channel has settled into its own pace. It's not chasing trends, it's the following seasons. Each upload is a postcard from a place where time moves more slowly. A gas station, a bobcat, a stretch of road where people are learning together to drive a little more gently. Some viewers will never make it to mile 47. They watch from apartments, farmhouses, hospital break rooms, truck cabs parked under other skies. But they carry the story with them, the image of a wild bobcat choosing the same concrete ledge again and again. The feeling that somewhere out there, on a quiet piece of desert, a station is still open, still watching, still caring. For Harold, this place is no longer just the business the highway left behind. It's become a small, steady promise that his years here mean something in the lives of both people and animals. For Nora, it's proof that her skills, her eye, her editing, her way of telling stories can hold space for healing, not just for selling. She's not just posting about a bobcat. She's curating a little refuge for anyone who needs to feel connected to something wild and kind. And for Mika, nothing has really changed. The bobcat is still out there in the sage and shadow, following instincts older than any road. The camera isn't a stage, it's just one more object in the landscape. When Mika passes by and hops onto that ledge, it's not for views or comments. It's because, for reasons only a bobcat would understand, that spot has become part of the nightly path. The real magic is what happens in us when we watch. Maybe you've noticed it in yourself over the course of this story. A loosening in the chest, a softness around memories of your own second chances, or the small rituals that keep you going. A sense that even if life has taken you down a side road you didn't plan on, there might still be beauty waiting at some overlooked stop. That's the part that keeps going after the credits roll. The pumps will shut off for the night, the open sign will go dark, Harold will lock the doors. Nora will turn out the office light, but leave the monitor on. On the screen, the empty ledge will glow under the desert stars. For a long moment, nothing much will happen. Then maybe, just at the edge of the frame, a bobcat shape will pass by, neither posing nor performing, just moving through its home. The camera will catch some of it. Most of it will miss, and that's all right. What matters is that this little station, and everyone who's been touched by it, has learned to honor what appears and to respect what stays beyond our reach. Before you click away, take one quiet breath for yourself. Think about your own mile 47, the place or person or small creature that reminded you you're not as alone as you thought. Maybe it's a bird at your window, a stray cat on your street, a stretch of road you always slow down on. Let that memory sit with you for a moment. If this story of a gas station and a smiling bobcat has warmed something in you, and be grateful if you tap like, hit subscribe, and stay with us for the next journey we share from the wild edges of the road. And if you feel moved to go one step further, you can leave a super thanks or make a small donation to help rescue, protect, and heal wild animals like bobcats who are trying to survive alongside our highways and towns. Every gesture, no matter how small, helps keep places like this and the lives that pass through them smiling long after the video ends.